Thanks for joining us today for Perspectives and Pathways, a special component of the Jones Day Talks podcast series. With these programs, we try to bring practical advice and insights to law school students and lawyers just starting their careers. And I think today's edition definitely fits that description. Jones Day's Miguel Eaton, who leads the firm's employee benefits and executive compensation practice, is joined by two associates, Stephen Collier and Anthony Kim, to talk about transitioning from law school to work life as a lawyer. You'll hear tips on handling different types of interviews, how to make an impression during the recruiting process, and a few remarks on building your personal and professional brand after you've landed that job. Keep it here. I'm Dave Dalton. You're listening to Jones Day Talks. Stephen Collier joined our new lawyers group in 2025 and is based in the firm's Columbus office. A graduate of the Ohio State University, he was a 4-year member of the school's football program, where he was part of 2 Big Ten championship teams and the 2014 College Football Playoff National Championship team. And Anthony Kim focuses his practice on commercial financing, representing banks, financial institutions, and public and private companies in secured and unsecured credit facilities. Anthony also has experience with civil and government investigations, including large volume document review and drafting. And partner Miguel Eaton co-chairs Jones Day's employee benefits and executive compensation practice. He also leads the firm's Veterans Initiative and serves on the Washington office's recruiting committee. So there's nobody better to talk to young lawyers about what it takes to take their career prospects to the next level than Miguel. So Miguel, thanks so much for taking some time to do this. You guys start talking. I'm going to be here. If something occurs to me where I'd like to chime in or do a follow-up, we'll go. But otherwise, Miguel, please take us away.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Anthony and Stephen, thanks for joining us today to talk on the pod. We're going to talk today a little bit about your law school experience, how you got to Jones Day, and I'd be interested to hear about how your sort of junior associate experience differs from sort of what you expected in law school, and then talk a little bit about sort of branding. I know a lot of law school career service offices talk about branding. That's a little scarier than it sounds, so hopefully we can assuage some concerns of law students as we talk about sort of what you feel like goes into branding once you join a law firm, et cetera. So, Anthony, why don't we start with you with some background? So you're double Boston College. Tell me how you ended up there for undergrad and why you decided to stay for law school.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I grew up in the Berkeley, California area in a family of 4. Notably, I'm an identical twin. I always catered more towards like the social sciences background, my brother more towards medicine. And when it came to picking undergrads, I always was interested in the East Coast. That's where my parents met, and that's where I was born, but didn't really spend my childhood there. So I was always strongly interested in schools like Boston College and was fortunately accepted. So had a really great 4 years at BC and naturally thought to continue my education there for law school. So went straight through and have now been in Boston for 8 years and been really enjoying it.
Great. How did Jones Day get on your radar as a law student? I know even myself, 20 years ago in law school, the firm names all sounded the same. It was kind of hard to differentiate. So what put Jones Day on your radar and what brought you here?
Yeah, so for my first year of law school, I was definitely learning the lay of the land, learning all these different big law firm names. And I was fortunate to be invited to the firm's 1L Perspectives and Pathways Conference. This is a weekend conference that takes place in one of our offices. The year I went, it was in the Dallas office. And that was a really wonderful opportunity for me to meet folks across the firm, as well as learn about some of the firm's specific programming. The one program I was really interested in was the New Lawyers Group. That's the firm's first-year program that allows all first-year associates to explore all practice groups they're interested in. That's a great way to figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you think you could really excel well at. So I knew that was something I wanted from my experience because I knew as a law student, I had no idea what I was going to do for a practice area. So those were some very major pulls for me to join the firm.
Great. And Stephen, turning to you. So you went to the Ohio State University for both undergrad and law school. Are you from Ohio?
I'm not actually. I'm born in Atlanta, Georgia, just outside, actually in a suburb called Marietta.
All right. And so football took you to Ohio State and you were a quarterback on a national championship team. So playing a sport in college at that high level and having that kind of team success, describe what that was like. Did you were going to have a feeling you were going to win a championship at Ohio State, or what was the feeling of choosing Ohio State to be an athlete, a student athlete?
No doubt. For sure. Yeah, student athlete, no doubt. When I was getting recruited, Coach Urban Meyer at the time, he expressed his desire to win a national championship here at Ohio State like he did before at the University of Florida. And that obviously, as a 16-year-old, was appealing to me. And luckily, we had a magical run that year, a lot of hard work, a lot of grit, and we got it done. So I'm just really glad to have been a part of that experience. It really was life-changing in a number of ways, and I still carry a lot of the lessons that I learned. Not only do I carry them throughout law school, but still now in my practice today. So it really was a blessing, a great opportunity.
I'm going to jump in here. I said I would, as the situation warrants. Miguel's very modest. I've known Miguel for a while. Miguel attended the U.S. Naval Academy prior to going on to law school at Duke. He was on an NCAA, Sweet 16 team, Miguel?
No, not 316. No. We just made it to the tournament. We lost in the first round.
Right.
We were a 16 seed. We were a 16 seed, but 16 is in there somewhere.
The point is you were invited to the dance, right? So I apologize.
Yes.
I got excited a little bit, and he was also a national collegiate boxing champion, heavyweight division. So anyway, so Stephen, you're in good company here. You flash that ring all you want, but this guy could probably knock out anybody you played football with. Right?
No, certainly. I'll stay away from Miguel when we get in the ring for sure.
I don't know about that, but thanks, Dave. That was a long time ago and some good memories. But so, Stephen, I would imagine there probably weren't a lot of guys on your team that were going to law school. So can you tell me a little bit about just the process you went through, like how early you knew you wanted to go to law school and when you really made that push to make it happen?
Yeah, no doubt. So I actually got injured my junior year, tore my ACL, MCL, some other things in my knee that I can't pronounce. But during that time, obviously sat me down, had some time to reflect, and started thinking about what was I good at and what if football didn't work out for me and what do those next steps look like. I ended up going to get my master's degree in kinesiology with a focus in sports management and ended up working for the Atlanta Falcons and Atlanta United, which is their MLS team down there, all owned by the same parent company. And so while I was down there, got to really get exposed to a lot of cool different things. And so I thought for a second I was going to take kind of the sports pathway a little bit further in my career, but actually ended up getting in contact with assistant general counsel down there. And he and I kind of just started hitting it off, talking about law and kind of the things that were going on in his world and what law school was like, and really sounded appealing to me for a couple of reasons. But the primary reason just being it sounded like something that was kind of having to operate systems at like a high level while also kind of being at some intersection with having to do something that mattered a lot and had a certain gravity to it. And so even now in my practice here at Jones Day, given it's only been a few months, it feels like I'm kind of doing that, where I'm having to kind of learn these really complex systems while doing something that is impactful, whether it's a large deal or help advising a company do something with their corporate structure. All of those things feel very significant. I'm just fortunate enough to be in a position to do that here. So that's kind of what led me here.
That's great. In terms of Jones Day being on your radar as a law student or even applying, sort of same question I asked Anthony, what made us stand out to you, or why did you even sort of sign up for us during on-campus interviewing?
For sure. Well, fortunately, going to law school at the Ohio State University, Jones Day's presence here is second to none. Just being a firm founded in Cleveland, having those roots tied to the state was the primary reason why I was interested, at least in the firm. And then throughout the interview process, just kind of getting to meet people throughout, I just received great vibes, for lack of a better word, from everybody that I spoke with. It was friendly people. They were people that I wanted to work with, that I wanted to learn from. And that's remained true in my experience up to this point.
That's great. I had a similar experience as a law student. I didn't know firm names. A regional sort of firm sounded the same as a Jones Day or a Kirkland and Ellis or anything else. So for me, it was part of just doing some diligence, talking to guys that were ahead of me in law school to figure out what kind of firms they liked. And then I learned a lot during the callback process. I just got a much stronger feeling than I thought I would about whether I would fit in there or not. And I'm just interested, Anthony, if you kind of had the same experience during sort of doing some callbacks, and did you get a strong sense after 3 or 4 or 5 callbacks if you thought you'd fit in one place better than somewhere else?
Absolutely. When it comes to the callback process, what stands out more importantly is the personality fit. And I just noticed, with a couple conversations that some just blend much more naturally than others. And I was fortunate to have met a lot of Jones Day lawyers through the 1L Perspectives and Pathways Conference, but meeting more of the folks in the Boston office in my interviews, it definitely helped seal that notion to me that, okay, this is a place I could see myself growing in, seeking mentorship in, and really just doing my best work.
And this is for all three of you, we talked about how Jones Day get on your radar. How do you get on Jones Day's radar? I mean, great grades, law review, what's it take? Because we've got first and second year law students listening to these programs. They want to know, how do you get in the race to end up at a Jones Day?
I can speak, at least from my experience. I was very insistent about kind of reaching out. I'm a first generation law student, so I wanted to kind of just talk to as many people as possible in the legal profession in Columbus. Luckily, I had a personal connection with somebody who knew somebody who worked here, and I just asked them to coffee. But it was also me doing my due diligence about that person and not just having a situation where I'm cold emailing, haven't done any research on who they are, what they do, what their practice is. I was genuinely interested in this person's work, how they got to where they were. Just having those genuine interest and connectivity points was big for me. And then as a result, it kind of just stemmed into more conversations with other people, and here we are. So just having a genuine interest in the people that are working here.
You were genuinely interested. You prepared. It was like watching game film, right?
Certainly,
Same thing.
yes.
Film
Yes.
stuff, right?
In one way, absolutely.
Sure. Anthony, what about you? What would you say to someone who wants to land at a Jones Day? What do you do?
Yeah, I echo the same message. Being really proactive and just making your name known to the firm is a big part in being recruited. Also, with that, of course, having stellar grades and just strong community involvements also have a big role in just showing who you are as a person and what you put your passions and pursuits in. But yeah, more generally, just speaking about my recruiting experience as a first year law student, I definitely just recruited heavily by sending those cold emails as well, having those coffee chats, because what's more important is having those conversations. It tells the associates and partners of that office, okay, this is a person who's interested in the Boston office, but what do they really like? What questions do they have? What is their genuine interest in this workplace? And for me, doing that was a big part of the reason why I ended up here now.
For me, and if I were talking to law students today, there are a few points I would make. One is doing well academically at your law school goes a long way. That's sort of the threshold factor. And all the firms, Jones Day and others, we interview at top law schools. So if you're at a top law school, you've already done one thing to help yourself get there. If you're at a law school that's ranked a little bit lower, firms still go there. Your just grades need to be a little bit better, because all the firms have guidelines from different law schools. But I will emphasize they are guidelines. And so if you're a little bit below, and your career service office will have what the guidelines are for each firm. And so if you're a little bit below them, don't write yourself off. Go and interview well. That's one thing you can do. The other thing that law students should do is don't take for granted the social events and the sort of cocktail hours that the firms throw. When you go there and meet people from the firm, I want you to realize that the firms are paying attention to the conversations that they have with you. Time is very valuable. And for partners and associates to step away from work and go to a recruiting event for a law school or for a group of law schools, I want the law students to realize that we take that exercise very seriously. And at the end of that, the recruiting people want to know, did you meet anybody that we should talk to? And so you're not anonymous when you go to those. There's a reason you wear a name tag. Usually you give your resume to the law firm or law firms when you go there. So I want the law students to realize that you are talked about afterward. It is a little bit kind of fraternity, sorority rush in a sense, and that you're going to be talked about afterwards. And so if you follow up with those people, it's really important to say, hey, I had a great time meeting these partners, and put that in your cover letter when you go to apply to those firms. If someone at Jones Day, I don't expect a law student to say, ever since I was 10 years old, I've always wanted to work at Jones Day. My assumption is you barely have heard of us, or you just learned from us as a 1L because some 2Ls or 3Ls worked at Jones Day. But you should have an answer to the reason of why are you interested in us? And a perfectly acceptable answer is, I met some of your partners at a social event, and I really enjoyed talking to them, and it seemed like a great place to work, and I wanted to learn more about it. And so if you sort of realize that those social events and the recruiting events that we put on, we are serious about the time and money we invest in those, and we go to those to meet you and get to know you a little bit better, so that when you applied for us for on-campus interviewing or come for a callback, we kind of have a sense of who you are already.
It's interesting. We've done these podcasts before, and people talked about preparing for the interview or the second interview or the follow-up. No one's ever talked about the somewhat social component in terms of meeting at those rather informal events. Miguel, how does someone prepare for that? You do a news search on Jones Day. Here's what the firm's high profile with. Here's what they've been working on. Do you look up partners in the practice that the candidate might be interested in long term? How do you prepare for something like this?
No, it's a great question. It depends on the particular circumstance. There's some times when we're going to host one of these events and we tell the law students these are the people who are going to be there. At least a cursory review of their bios is helpful, in part just because it can help you form some questions when you talk to those people at the events. And some general knowledge about the firm. Like, for example, for Jones Day, one of the really distinguishing features that we have is the new lawyer group that Anthony talked about. And so for us, and for me in particular, if I'm talking to someone at a social event and they've never heard of the new lawyer group, it's one of the things we advertise the most. It's clear to me you haven't looked us up very much, and that could be fine if there's a lot of firms there, or you didn't know you were going to meet me in particular. But that's one of those things that if a firm is known for something, having that sort of baseline knowledge and being able to ask a question about that is helpful and lets the law firm partner or associate realize that you've done some research and that you seem interested in us in particular.
Miguel, you've done hundreds of interviews, I'm sure, candidates. What makes somebody stand out in the first 20 or 30 seconds? This candidate, he or she, very poised, obviously bright. You've seen the resume. Is there something that grabs your attention right off the bat?
I don't think it's the first 20 or 30 seconds. It's a little bit of an interesting process when you do on campus, right? Because you have everybody's resume. And so there's some things that stick out on a resume. For example, Stephen playing quarterback at Ohio State, like that's going to stick out. And this is a nice segue into sort of the branding conversation, right? And then you go to meet the person, and it's always nice when the person presents consistently with their resume, right? So if I saw Stephen's resume and I walked in and he was 5'2" and 200 pounds, I would have some questions about like, what is going on here? Like, was it Ohio State club football? Was it like Ohio State intramural? Right. But so that would be right. It doesn't just go for sort of appearance. Personality also sort of fits, right? So you want the sort of presentation of the person to somewhat match the resume. And if it doesn't, you've got some interesting things to talk about and you ask questions. In terms of sort of like making people stick out, grades are one thing, work experience is also helpful. And if you're a person who's sort of straight through kindergarten to JD, one of the things you can do in an interview is relay a story or talk about examples of where you've had to work hard, be responsible, and do the kinds of things that we would expect of a lawyer at a big law firm, and that we sort of, at least implicitly or subjectively, think that someone who's worked for a few years kind of has that experience. So whether you were a college athlete or you had to work during college or law school, anything like that that can assuage some concerns of the interviewer that being 25 or 26 years old, starting out at $225,000 a year is not going to be too much for you. That you're going to present mature enough and have enough judgment that the firm is not wasting its investment in you by bringing you in as a summer associate.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Miguel, we traded some notes back and forth preparing for this recording. Maybe we segue a little bit about getting out of law school, becoming a lawyer, the grind, if you will. I say that with peace and love and all respect. Becoming a lawyer out of law school, building that brand. Maybe we take this conversation that direction for the duration.
Sure. So, Anthony, branding was not sort of a topic that we talked about a lot in law school or that we heard a lot about from career service professionals 20 years ago when I was a law student. So can you just tell me a little bit about is branding or that sort of notion something that was discussed by career services, or was that something that was a topic for you guys as law students?
At our law school, not really. I would say the better word was more just to like make yourself known and be proactive. But entering this profession, I do realize how valuable branding is. In my simple definition of it, it's just like what people think of you when your name comes up. And especially with our new lawyers group, branding is especially important to get your name out there, to try out different projects, to get looped in this matter, or even get the opportunity to work with a potential associate or partner. So for me, I was someone who was K through JD. I did not have a lot of work experience. I had a couple of part-time jobs through my college and law school time, but when it came to joining this profession, there definitely was a steep learning curve. It is a little bit night and day when it comes to the law school experience and the big law firm experience. But I do think by promoting yourself, you can put yourself in the right direction. For myself, about the mentorships I've been able to gain through those cold reach outs to folks across the firm, I can think of 4 or 5 people that I reach out to consistently for career advice within my practice group, but also not within my practice group. So by having that ability to brand myself and also just really grow my network, that's been helpful in managing this transition from school to law and also to help promote myself within the firm.
And Anthony, do you feel like you've had to do, when some people hear the term create a brand for yourself, that you feel like you have to do some really extraordinary things, like have a TikTok page or write articles or do all that kind of stuff? Have you felt like it was that sort of intensive or those many extra steps, or is it more do good work, be somebody who's in the office, et cetera, and that helps create the brand in and of itself?
I think it's more the latter. Just showing that extra step of initiative is really what helps get your name out there. Providing good work quality and being responsive are great initial steps. But like when it comes to, let's say you're on a document review and 500 extra documents just got sent out, but they need to be produced the next day. Being willing to step up and say, hey, I have time tonight to look through those and take that first pass, that can play a big role and also be super helpful in just showing what your brand is and helping demonstrate that to the associates and partners you work with. With that too, just making yourself known in the office by stopping by some doors when you have some free time and saying, hey, and also asking questions when things come up. Just taking those little extra steps really do go a long way and are more valuable to the brand rather than, as you say, creating a TikTok page or doing something big and illustrative.
And Stephen, what about you at Ohio State Career Services? Was there a lot of talk of branding? Was it phrased in that way, or was it more sort of organic, like doing the things Anthony talked about?
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely more in line with Anthony's approach. And it was less, I guess, explicitly titled branding and more so just kind of like your professional reputation, right? Like, what do people think of you when you're not in the room, as Anthony mentioned? And to his point, yeah, all those things are done not with the kind of flashy things that you see. And there's nothing wrong with that if that is indeed what you feel like you need to do, depending on your specific circumstances. But I found that the best approach is similar to Anthony's and just kind of being somebody who's known as being reliable, on time, precise, pays attention to detail. Things are much more valuable to me as opposed to kind of the more flashy front-facing things that you might see online.
What about leveraging a strength? Everybody's really great at something. You're a numbers guy. You're a people person, whatever. By the time you're in your 20s, you kind of know what you're good at. And how do you apply that to your career track and building your profession? It's like, I'm pretty good in a social setting, or I can read financial statements. Like I've got an undergrad in accounting, whatever. How do you promote yourself to make sure that your colleagues, your clients know he or she is great and this is a strength? Is there a way to do that without being obnoxious?
Yeah, let me take that one as sort of the more senior lawyer here. Look, I think you're right, Dave. There are people who it is not common for lawyers to be really facile with spreadsheets. And in fact, one of our partners who was an accounting guy, accounting major undergrad, he got a lot of deposition experience early because he could really work with financial experts easily. And he's in our battle group. So he does business and tort litigation. And so those kind of really sort of objective things, people know what's on your resume, and if you're on a case team and you're the one that's like, yeah, I'm happy to look at those spreadsheets. I was an accounting major. A lot of times people know you were an accounting major anyway,
Sure.
but if they didn't, if there's some skill set, either a language skill or something, you can raise your hand and say, I'm happy to help if this comes in. And that's not obnoxious. That's showing something that's going to help the team perform better. I think for the social stuff, that's pretty evident from day one too. I tell law students, any lawyer who says, "Man, I wish I was a summer associate again," I'm like, really? I mean, I'm an extrovert and I like being around people, but it's a 10-week job interview, so I really wouldn't want to be a summer associate again. But for the introverts who have to sort of just like put on their extrovert pants and do that for 10 weeks, you don't have to do that once you become an associate at the firm. But for the people who really enjoy sort of recruiting and being an extrovert. People know that. And I think one of the things you can help is recruiting is always looking for people to do interviews on callbacks or go to law schools and talk about the firm, et cetera. If you raise your hand to the recruiting people, they're not going to say no. And if you do a good job at it and enjoy it, that's the kind of thing that they're going to come back to you and ask you to do it again. Because if you say yes, they're going to keep calling you. So I think it's kind of organic. And it's one of the reasons that we look at resumes and do callbacks and have you at the firm for 10 weeks over the summer. We get a pretty good sense of what your personality is and what kind of skills you bring that are not the typical legal research and writing skills, whether it's languages or accounting background or science background, et cetera.
Can we wrap this up? And Miguel, I'm hoping you could kind of kick this off, but we would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about mentoring at Jones Day. In fact, Anthony mentioned it, but the firm puts a premium on it, both informal and just organic. These relationships tend to spring up. Talk about the importance of mentoring at a large law firm like Jones Day. How important is that to career development?
I think it's vital for a few reasons. One is law firms are interesting places. They're places typically that operate with a lot of unwritten rules. And it's not that people are hiding the rules from you or aren't willing to reveal the rules if you ask questions, but we get used to working weekly, monthly, yearly in that system that we've sort of grown up in. And so when first and second year lawyers and even summer associates ask questions about the way things work, people are going to tell you. And there's an appreciation for all of the lawyers that have been someplace for a while. It's a unique path in that we've all been where the law students and the first year associates are. And we remember how uncertain that time can be and how the practice of law differs very much from your law school experience and even being a summer associate. So I don't know any single lawyer who is unwilling to share their experience with you. And to Anthony's point about knocking on doors and asking people if they'll grab coffee, I think the mentor-mentee relationship is a vital one. But I would say the onus is really on the mentee to ask questions and to schedule coffees or whatever, because I, as the mentor or the senior person, I've got a job to do. I'm going to go about doing my job. And it doesn't occur to most of us to say, I need to check in with my mentee every month or every 2 months. We love when the mentees take the initiative to be like, hey, can we grab coffee to talk about me choosing a practice group or what it's like to work for this partner or what your experience was working on this kind of case or taking your first deposition. Lawyers, we are very susceptible to flattery, and implicitly asking us about our experiences is flattery. And so almost all of us are happy to tell war stories about the first time we took a deposition or working for that really demanding partner. And so I think the junior lawyers will learn a lot from that. They just have to, I think, take the initiative to ask and set up the time.
Anthony, Stephen, wrap us up. Talk about mentoring and what you've experienced so far. Anthony first, please.
Yeah, so I definitely was fortunate to have great formal mentors with the firm's mentorship program. And I definitely echo what Miguel was saying is it is more on us to make those reach outs and to ask those questions. Because, I mean, the mentor, how are they supposed to know, oh, I'm struggling with XYZ item? So I think that was a great benefit to me my first year. But also, as I discussed earlier, forming a lot of informal mentorships has also been very valuable. And for me, that came as simple as even reaching out through email to folks in cross offices. Also, as Miguel said, knocking on some doors and saying, hey, do you have a second to chat? And that's proven very valuable to me today, too. It's really nice to have people that will always support you and are willing to ask some of those questions that you may think are a little difficult to answer or something you wouldn't want to shoot off right away to the partner. So mentorship is a valuable exercise and something I'll definitely keep doing throughout my associate years.
Stephen, what if you found a perfect mentor at this law firm and she's great? It's like, I can learn from this person. It's going to be awesome. But you find out she's a University of Michigan grad. What do you do, Stephen?
Oh man. I guess I gotta put the university allegiances aside briefly and have the end goal in mind.
We're all wearing the Jones Day jersey now, so that's
there you go. That's it.
Indeed.
That's why he's Miguel, people. That's why he's Miguel. Go ahead, Stephen. Sorry.
No doubt. No, but sure. And I guess just to kind of dovetail off of Anthony's answer,
Yeah.
mentorship is definitely a huge piece of my practice as well. One of the things that I'm learning, though, is to kind of take the long view in mentorship and just understanding that, ideally the relationships that I'm forming will not only useful over the next year to 2 years to 3 years, but hopefully these are lifelong bonds that we're forming. And so kind of treating them as such, not only asking about substantive stuff at work or career guidance, but also just kind of getting to know that person on like an actual deep personal way. Not only does it benefit you in the long run, but it also creates more sticky relationships, and it makes me feel better about coming to work every day knowing that, yeah, I know so-and-so just had a kid, or so-and-so has a big trip coming up this weekend. Those things are kind of the things that make life and work feel much more rewarding, and just it's a huge part of my practice.
Well said. Miguel, send us out of here. So anything else that these listeners should hear from this great panel? All three were terrific today, but anything else you want to leave us with?
I just think for the law students especially, I know the recruiting cycle gets earlier and earlier, but even though the timing has moved a little bit, the basics are still the same. Preparing for your on-campus interview, asking the people who've done it before you goes really, really a long way. And so I know things have changed a little bit in timing, but the basics are all the same. So the people who did this 5 and 10 years ago, you can still learn a lot from them.
Awesome. Miguel, Anthony, Stephen, thanks. All three of you were great. Let's do this again sometime. Miguel, always a pleasure. Thanks especially to you. Know how busy you are and how valuable your time is. So thanks for leading us through this discussion.
Thanks, Dave.
For contact information for Stephen, Anthony, or Miguel, visit jonesday.com. For information on career opportunities at Jones Day, go to jonesday.com/careers. As always, we thank you for listening. I'm Dave Dalton. We will talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to Jones Day Talks. Comments heard on Jones Day Talks should not be construed as legal advice regarding any specific facts or circumstances. The opinions expressed on Jones Day Talks are those of lawyers appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the firm. For more information, please visit jonesday.com.